My family gave my brother a house and me a lottery ticket. I grew up knowing one simple rule in my household. My older brother, Ryan, got the best of everything, and I got whatever was left. It wasn't even something I questioned, it was just the way things were. Before I tell my story, let me know where you're watching from. Drop a comment below and subscribe to hear more stories about disparate treatment. I still remember the Christmas when Ryan unwrapped a brand new PlayStation 5, the hottest gift of the time. The sheer excitement on his face, the way my parents beamed with pride, it was like he had won the jackpot. I, on the other hand, received a t-shirt from a clearance rack at Target, a size too big with a logo for a local cleaning service in New Jersey. I was 7 years old, and even then I knew better than to complain. Be grateful, my mom Eleanor always said. Ryan is older, he needs more. So I smiled, told her I loved the shirt, and watched my brother disappear into his room to enjoy his brand new console. Later, I sat on the couch watching reruns of old sitcoms, pretending I didn't care. That was the pattern for everything. Ryan got a new car when he turned 16, a shiny silver Ford Focus with a big red bow on the hood. I got a used bike with a flat tire, and a promise that it's good exercise. He received a fully paid college education while I got a stack of financial aid forms and a pep talk about learning responsibility. I wasn't even jealous at that point. It was just the reality of my life. I adapted, worked hard, made do with what I had, and convinced myself it built character. Our house was classic middle-class America, a modest two-story home with beige siding, a basketball hoop over the garage, and a fridge covered in Ryan's honor roll certificates. Mom loved making casserole rolls from recipes she found on Pinterest, and Dad, George, was the king of backyard grilling, weather permitting. I remember summer weekends when Ryan would invite his friends over to swim in the neighbor's above-ground pool, while I mowed the lawn. "You're a team player," he'd say, handing me a generic store-brand soda as a reward. And then came the moment that should have shattered any illusion of fairness. Ryan graduated college, my parents threw him a huge party, rented out a fancy venue in downtown Chicago, hired a DJ, and even had a custom cake shaped like a diploma. Over 100 people showed up, including relatives I didn't even know we had. Mom kept saying, "This is what hard work looks like." At the end of the night, they handed him the keys to his new house, a beautiful, freshly built home in a quiet suburb of Atlanta, fully paid for. "We're so proud of you. You deserve this."
A year later, I graduated from college too. No party, no big celebration, just a quiet dinner at a chain restaurant in Phoenix, where my parents handed me a single white envelope. I opened it expecting maybe a check to help with my student loans. Instead, inside was a lottery ticket. "We thought this would be fun," my mom said, grinning. "You never know, you could hit the jackpot." I waited for the punchline, some kind of joke, but no, that was it. My entire graduation gift was a $5 scratch-off ticket. When I looked at my dad, he just shrugged. "Well, we spent a lot on Ryan's house." I laughed, a real, genuine laugh, because honestly, what else was there to do? "Guess my only shot at getting something nice is winning the jackpot, huh?" I said, holding up the ticket. No one disagreed. And that's where it all began. I sat on my old secondhand couch in my tiny studio apartment in Brooklyn, staring at the lottery ticket on the coffee table. The same ticket my parents gave me for graduating college. It wasn't even scratched yet. I hadn't touched it since that night. It just sat there, mocking me, with the promise of a jackpot I knew I'd never win. I tried not to be angry. I really did. For weeks, I brushed it off as another family quirk. My parents had their favorites, and I just wasn't one of them. No big deal, I told myself. I didn't need gifts or recognition. I was an adult now, independent. I could make my own way in the world. But the more I thought about it, the more that sour feeling settled in my chest. My friends didn't help. When I told them about the lottery ticket, they were outraged. "Dude, that's not just favoritism, that's straight up disrespect. They gave your brother a house and you got a ticket? That's wild." Hearing someone else say it out loud made it worse. I spent nights lying awake, replaying every moment when I had been the afterthought. The clearance rack shirts, the bike with the flat tire, the college tuition I had to scrape together while Ryan got everything handed to him. I wasn't just bitter, I felt like a fool for forever pretending it didn't matter. So I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront my parents or have some dramatic showdown. That would be pointless. They just tell me I was overreacting or too sensitive. No, I decided to quietly distance myself. I found a job at a small marketing firm and signed a lease on a cramped one-bedroom apartment downtown. The place was tiny, with outdated appliances, and neighbors who held late-night karaoke sessions through paper-thin walls. But it was mine. No handout, no strings attached.
My parents didn't even seem to notice the shift. Ryan, on the other hand, kept inviting me over to his house. The house our parents bought for him. Every time I visited, it felt like stepping into a shrine to his success. The walls were adorned with photos of Ryan in his cap and gown, Ryan posing with his new car, Ryan cutting the ribbon in front of his new home. My parents were always there, lounging on the couch or admiring the latest renovation. "Isn't this backsplash gorgeous?" Mom said once, running her hand along the subway tiles in Ryan's kitchen. We helped him pick it out. So proud of our boy. I stood there nodding politely while a voice in my head whispered, "They'll never say that about you." The more time I spent in that house, the more invisible I felt. Conversations revolved around Ryan's job, Ryan's hobbies, Ryan's future plans. If I mentioned something from my life, a project at work, a funny story about my noisy neighbors, they'd smile vaguely and then steer the topic back to Ryan's latest accomplishment. One night, after another dinner where I sat like a spectator at the Ryan show, I went home and opened the junk drawer in my kitchen. There was the lottery ticket. I picked it up, turning it over in my hands. The odds of winning were printed in tiny letters on the back. 1 in 292 million. I almost threw it away, but instead, I dropped it back in the drawer and shut it with a snap. That night, lying in bed, I realized something. I'd spent my whole life hoping my parents would see me the way they saw Ryan. But maybe it was time to stop playing a game I was never meant to win. The next morning, I woke up and made coffee in my ancient, sputtering drip machine. I stood by the window watching the city come to life below me. Cars honking, dog walkers hustling by, the smell of burnt toast wafting from my neighbor's kitchen. I picked up my phone and stared at the family group chat. Ryan had sent another picture. "New deck furniture, check it out." Mom and Dad replied with heart emojis and "so proud of you." I typed out a reply, then deleted it. Instead, I muted the chat and tossed the phone on the couch. Enough was enough. I didn't need their validation. I was done waiting for permission to matter. The ticket stayed in the drawer, untouched, and life went on, for now. Time passed, and life settled into a relentless grind. I worked 2 jobs just to cover rent on my tiny, outdated apartment. Mornings started at the marketing firm, where I spent hours crafting campaigns for local businesses that usually involved cheesy slogans and stock photos of smiling families. Evenings were reserved for a diner job, where I wore a grease-stained apron and served burgers and milkshakes to high school kids who left sticky fingerprints on the menus. Meanwhile, Ryan cruised around town in his brand new Lexus SUV, the one Mom and Dad gifted him for his hard work. Hard work? The guy didn't even have a job. He was exploring his options, which apparently meant going golfing with Dad, trying out expensive hobbies, and planning weekend getaways with his fiancée, Audrey. Yes, Ryan was engaged now. I found out the same way I found out about everything in my family, through the family group chat. One day, amid the usual stream of photos of Ryan's latest home upgrade and Mom's casseroles, came a picture of Audrey flashing a diamond ring the size of a gumball. The caption read, "She said yes, #blessed." No call, no text, just another picture in the digital shrine to Ryan's success. I shrugged it off and went back to work, flipping pancakes for a couple of truckers who debated the best barbecue joints in the state. But that nagging feeling stuck with me. It was like an itch I couldn't scratch. My family had always favored Ryan, but this felt like more than favoritism. It felt like a deliberate reminder that I didn't matter. The official announcement came 2 weeks later when Mom invited me to a family dinner. She said, "We want to catch up. Haven't seen you in ages." The last time we'd seen each other was Ryan's housewarming party 6 months ago. I showed up at Ryan's house at 6 p.m. sharp, carrying a bottle of wine I couldn't really afford. Mom opened the door, gushing about the new living room decor. "Look at that accent wall. We helped Ryan pick the color. Isn't it sophisticated?" The evening unfolded like every other family gathering. Dad talked about Ryan's plans for the future. Mom showed off pictures of Audrey's engagement ring to anyone who would listen, and Ryan cracked jokes about how stressful wedding planning was. I sat there chewing dried chicken and nodding at the right moments, waiting for the real reason they'd invited me. Finally, Mom cleared her throat and tapped a wine glass with a spoon. "We have some exciting news," she said, beaming. "Ryan and Audrey have set a date for the wedding, and we're so thrilled to help them with everything." Everything turned out to mean booking a luxury venue, covering catering costs, and buying Audrey a custom wedding dress. They'd even offered to pay for a 2-week honeymoon in the Bahamas. "We just want to give them the gay of their dreams," Mom said. I sat there, gripping my fork, trying to keep my expression neutral, but the words slipped out before I could stop them. "And me? You ever planned to help me with anything?" Silence. The kind that makes your ears ring. Ryan shifted in his chair. Dad coughed into his napkin. Mom's smile faltered. "Well, honey," she said, her voice laced with condescension, "no one's stopping you from working harder." I laughed. A short, bitter sound that even surprised me. Right, because 2 jobs aren't enough. Mom opened her mouth to respond, but I didn't wait to hear what came next. I stood up, dropped my napkin on the plate, and walked out the door. The cool night air hit me like a slap as I stood on the sidewalk, breathing hard. My phone buzzed in my pocket with messages from the family chat. I didn't look. I just blocked the group and turned off the phone. That was it. The final straw. I was done trying to be a part of a family that treated me like an afterthought. The lottery ticket was still in my drawer at home, untouched. As I walked toward my car, one thought kept circling in my head. I had no idea how, but I was going to find a way to win, and it wasn't going to come from a scratch-off. The next morning, I stopped by a local diner for breakfast. The waitress poured me a cup of coffee and gave me a sympathetic smile when I muttered something about family drama. Families, huh? They sure know how to hit you where it hurts. I chuckled and left a generous $10 tip. As I walked out, I felt lighter somehow. Maybe I couldn't change my family, but I could finally start living for myself. And I was just getting started.
Months passed, and life settled into a comfortable, if exhausting, routine. I juggled my 2 jobs, paid my bills on time, and even got to know my neighbors a bit better. The elderly lady across the hall, Mrs. Thompson, always baked cookies when her grandkids visited and made sure to slip me a plate, saying, "You look like you could use some sugar, dear." The guy downstairs, Dean, had a habit of blasting country music at midnight, but always apologized with a 6-pack of cheap beer the next day. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. One Saturday morning, I decided to tackle the chaos in my apartment. Between work and my growing apathy for home maintenance, the place had turned into a cluttered mess. Empty takeout containers balanced on the coffee table, old magazines covered the kitchen counter, and the junk drawer in the kitchen had become a black hole of forgotten items. I started with the kitchen, tossed expired condiments from the fridge, scrubbed the sticky residue off the counters, and finally faced the infamous junk drawer. Batteries, pens that didn't work, a single shoelace with no partner, and then there it was, the lottery ticket. I held it between my fingers, the paper slightly crumpled and edges worn from months of neglect. My parents' special graduation gift. I almost laughed as I remembered Mom's words. "You never know." "Yeah, right," I muttered, tossing it onto the counter. But curiosity is a stubborn thing. I grabbed my phone and opened the state lottery website. The numbers were printed on the back of the ticket. 081527344256. I entered the numbers, hit check results, and waited. Congratulations, jackpot winner, $134 million. I blinked. The screen didn't change. I hit refresh, same result. I checked the numbers again, reading each digit out loud. 081527344256. Exact match. No way, I whispered. My heart raced as adrenaline surged through me. I rubbed my eyes, thinking maybe the lack of sleep from my double shifts was playing tricks on me. But the numbers didn't lie. $134 million. Panic set in. My hands trembled as I placed the ticket on the counter like it might explode. What was I supposed to do now? Who do you even call when you win a fortune out of nowhere? I paced the room, heart pounding. I knew people's lives changed overnight, but this was absurd. Yesterday, I was scraping together coins for a vending machine coffee. Today, I was apparently a multi-millionaire.
Questions flooded my mind. Do I tell anyone? Call a lawyer? How do you even claim this kind of money? And then the darker thought hit me. What would my family do if they found out? I picked up the ticket again, staring at the numbers. My phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. Dude, can you help me move some patio furniture next weekend? We just got a new set. Mom and Dad love it. I clenched my jaw. Ryan was probably sitting in his perfectly furnished house, bought with my parents' money, oblivious to the fact that his younger brother had just stumbled into a fortune. I placed the ticket back in the drawer, this time under a pile of random receipts. My mind raced as I imagined the scenarios, the sudden interest from my parents, the fake enthusiasm from Ryan, the endless ways they could manipulate me into sharing the winnings. I sat down at my wobbly kitchen table and opened my laptop. Google became my best friend that morning. What to do after winning the lottery was my first search. The results overwhelmed me. Hire a financial advisor. Stay anonymous if possible. Avoid big purchases too soon. I scribbled notes like a college student cramming for finals. Don't post online. Talk to a lawyer. Taxes. So many taxes. My stomach growled, but I couldn't eat. The number $134 million danced across my vision like a neon sign. My phone buzzed again, this time a family group chat notification with Ryan's latest selfie, him and Audrey at brunch with Mom and Dad. The caption read, "Family time, #blessed." I turned off the phone and shoved it in the couch cushions. This money could change my life, but if my family found out, it could also destroy what little piece I had left. I had no idea what came next, but I knew one thing for sure. This ticket wasn't leaving the drawer anytime soon. The lottery ticket stayed buried in my junk drawer for 3 more days before I finally worked up the nerve to do something about it. Every time I walked past the kitchen, I felt its presence like a ticking time bomb. One night, I dreamt that Ryan found it and showed up at my apartment with balloons and a grin, saying, "Thanks for the gift, little bro." I woke up drenched in sweat.
I knew I couldn't handle this alone, so I did what any overwhelmed adult would do. I Googled what to do if you win the lottery. After scrolling past a dozen clickbait articles promising 5 tips to stay rich forever, I found a list of certified financial advisors. I picked one named Carol because she had the best reviews and a friendly smile in her profile picture. Sitting in Carol's office felt surreal. The place smelled like lemon polish and success. Her desk was sleek, her coffee machine fancier than anything I'd ever seen. She listened to my story with a calm, professional nod, occasionally jotting down notes. "The first rule," she said, "is don't tell anyone. Not your friends, not your family, no one. People change when they hear about money." "That won't be a problem," I said, thinking of my parents and Ryan. Over the next few weeks, Carol helped me set up new bank accounts and create an LLC to claim the prize anonymously. She explained taxes, investments, and the importance of living below my means. Lottery winners go broke all the time. We're going to make sure that doesn't happen to you. The day I picked up the check was the weirdest day of my life. I walked into the lottery office in jeans and a hoodie, heart pounding. A security guard gave me a once-over, then smiled when I handed over my ID. 20 minutes later, I was holding a check for $134 million. Well, after taxes, it was closer to $85 million, but still. The first thing I did was go home and stare at it. I half expected it to disappear like a mirage. When it didn't, I made a promise to myself. I wouldn't blow it on nonsense. I'd be smart. So I started small. I paid off my student loans, then quit my diner job with an absurd sense of relief. My boss, Linda, patted me on the shoulder and said, "We'll miss you, kid. Don't forget us when you're famous." I left her a $500 tip and walked out grinning. Next, I bought a car. Not a flashy sports car, just a sleek black Tesla Model S that felt like driving a spaceship. When I pulled into the parking lot at my marketing job, my coworkers swarmed around me. "Dude, did you rob a bank?" When asked, I just shrugged and said, "Hard work pays off." But the house was my true indulgence. I found a modern, sun-soaked property in the suburbs of Dallas. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a pool, and a kitchen so pristine I felt guilty cooking in it. The kicker? It was bigger and nicer than Ryan's house. I moved in quietly. No housewarming party, no family announcements. My parents still thought I lived in that tiny apartment downtown, and honestly, I liked it that way. Most nights I sat on my new patio with a craft beer in hand, watching the sunset. My phone buzzed occasionally with texts from Ryan. "Need help picking out a honeymoon spot? Got any ideas?" Or, "Mom says you never visit anymore. What's up?" I never answered. I wasn't bitter, I was just done. The money gave me freedom, sure, but it also gave me clarity. I didn't need their approval or their fake praise. For the first time in my life, I was living on my own terms. Still, every so often I'd open the family group chat and scroll through the messages. Pictures of Ryan's wedding plans, Dad grilling steaks in the backyard, Mom raving about the latest home renovation. I wondered if they'd even notice if I'd disappeared entirely. Then, one night, while scrolling through real estate listings, just for fun, I saw it. A property down the street from Ryan's house had just hit the market. Bigger yard, better view, double the price. I stared at the screen, my finger hovering over the "schedule a tour" button. The temptation was intoxicating, because what better way to stay hidden than right under their noses?
The next day, I drove by the property. It was perfect. A massive oak tree in the front yard, a wraparound porch, and enough distance from Ryan's house to avoid run-ins, but close enough for me to keep tabs. As I sat in my Tesla, sipping a coffee from the cup holder, the absurdity hit me. A year ago, I was scraping quarters from my couch for gas money. Now, I was casually shopping for a house in Ryan's neighborhood just to mess with his head. I laughed out loud, startling a jogger passing by. Yeah, this was going to be interesting. The new house was everything I dreamed of and a little more. Waking up to the sun streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, brewing coffee in a kitchen that could belong to a cooking show, and lounging on my wraparound porch with a craft beer became my new normal. I even bought a hammock for lazy afternoons when work didn't demand my attention. For the first time in my life, I felt like I'd made it. But the thing about secrets, they never stay hidden for long. It started innocently enough. One afternoon, while I was stocking the new outdoor fridge with drinks for myself and precisely 0 guests, my phone buzzed. A text from an old high school friend. "Dude, just saw you in a sick Tesla near Oakwood. New ride?" I froze. Oakwood was near my new neighborhood, the neighborhood my family didn't know I lived in. I brushed it off with a vague reply. "Yeah, just upgraded. Life's been good." But the pit in my stomach tightened. The next day I ran into Dean, my old neighbor from the downtown apartment. "Man, I didn't know you moved to the burbs," he said, giving me a playful nudge. "Tesla, new digs? You hit the jackpot or something?" I laughed it off, muttering something about a better job and needing more space, but I could feel the walls closing in. Then came the call. "Hey, sweetheart." Mom's voice crackled through the phone speaker one sunny morning. I nearly dropped my coffee. We hadn't talked in months. "Miss me?" I said, voice carefully neutral. "That's new."
Well, she chirped, ignoring the jab. We heard you've been doing great. New car, nice house. We're so proud of you. Pride? The same people who gave me a lottery ticket instead of tuition money were now suddenly proud? The knot in my stomach twisted tighter. How did you... My voice trailed off. Oh, Ryan mentioned it, she said lightly. Apparently one of his friends saw you driving through Oakwood. Isn't that funny? Small world. Or big mouths.
The next call came that evening. Hey, Mike. Dude. Ryan's voice boomed through the speaker like we were old pals. Man, we gotta catch up. Heard you're doing pretty well these days. New car, nice house. We should totally grab a beer. Ryan didn't drink beer. He drank overpriced cocktails with names like Smoky Elderflower Sunset. Busy these days, I said, trying to sound casual. Oh, come on, he pressed. Just one drink. We'll swing by your place. I heard it's pretty sweet. And there it was. They knew. Somewhere along the way, the secret I guarded so carefully had slept. Maybe I got too comfortable. Maybe that Tesla was a little too shiny. The house a little too nice. Word had gotten out. And now my family, who hadn't given me a second thought in years, was suddenly desperate to reconnect. The next morning, I found myself pacing the immaculate kitchen. My phone buzzed again. Mom this time. Let's do dinner soon. Your dad's been talking about you nonstop. I opened the family group chat, the one I had muted months ago. The most recent message was a picture of Ryan standing in front of a massive oak tree with a caption, Mike's new neighborhood is nice. Maybe we should move here too. My blood ran cold. They weren't just curious, they were circling. I sat at the kitchen island, mind racing. The coffee machine hissed behind me, filling the air with the rich aroma of my morning ritual. I barely noticed. My family had never shown interest in my life before. Now they were practically planning to move into my backyard. That afternoon, I called Carol, my financial advisor. They know, I said, voice tight. Your family? She asked. Yeah, I don't know how much, but they're sniffing around. She sighed. It happens more than you think. Money does weird things to relationships. Stay cool, stick to the plan, and whatever you do, don't let guilt pull you back in. Easier said than done. I drove around aimlessly for hours, ending up at a random diner off the highway in New Mexico. The waitress poured me coffee and asked me if I wanted the pie special. It's pecan, she said, and it'll solve at least half of your problems. I chuckled and ordered a slice. She was right. It didn't fix my family drama, but it reminded me of something important. I wasn't that overlooked kid anymore. I had options now. But the game had just changed, and I needed to be ready. The invitation came through a text from Mom. Sunday dinner at Ryan's. We miss you so much. Please come. I stared at the message, drumming my fingers on the kitchen counter. My gut told me it was a setup, but curiosity won. I'd spent months dodging family calls, ignoring Ryan's phony invitations, and living my best anonymous millionaire life. But maybe, just maybe, this was an olive branch. Sunday evening, I pulled into Ryan's driveway. His house looked the same as always. Meticulously landscaped, massive porch, and that smug, I didn't earn this vibe. I parked my Tesla next to his Lexus SUV and walked to the door, gripping a bottle of mid-price wine I had picked up as a peace offering. Mikey, Mom chirped as she opened the door, arms wide. She hadn't called me that since middle school. She pulled me into a hug and patted my back with excessive enthusiasm. Look at you, so grown up. Ryan appeared behind her, grinning like he just won a game he hadn't played. Hey, bro, long time no see. Come on in. The living room was just as I remembered. Family photos, an oversized sectional, and that faint citrusy scent of cleaning products. Dad was already seated at the dining table, flipping through his phone. Michael, he said with a nod, like we were cold coworkers at a board meeting. Glad you made it. Dinner started with faux small talk. Ryan bragged about his latest golf scores. Mom gushed about Audrey's wedding dress. And Dad mentioned his new grilling equipment, state-of-the-art infrared burners. I chewed through overcooked steak and waited for the other shoe to drop. It took exactly 20 minutes.
So, Mom said, setting down her fork and tilting her head, we were just so curious. How did you afford that beautiful house and that fancy car? Silence. Even Ryan paused mid-bite. My pulse quickened, but I forced a casual shrug. I made some smart investments. Got into a startup early. They did well. Now I get regular dividends. Mom's eyes lit up like she'd just found a coupon for free designer handbags. Really? Wow, that's amazing. Ryan leaned forward. Yeah, man, that's awesome. What's the company? Maybe I should invest too. It's niche. Tech stuff. Complicated. Ryan nodded like he understood. He didn't. You know, Mom said, her voice slipping into that syrupy tone she used when asking for favors. Ryan's been thinking about expanding the house, adding a sunroom and maybe a bigger garage. Yeah, we'd love to host more family gatherings. I saw where this was going.
It's just so hard these days, Mom continued, casting a glance at Dad, who sighed on cue. With the cost of construction and everything. But if we could get a little help, from someone who's done so well. Ryan grinned. We are family, after all. There was the pitch. I set my fork down, my appetite gone. The old me might have squirmed, caved, and handed over a check just to keep the peace. But I wasn't that guy anymore. I'll think about it, I said with a neutral smile. Mom clasped her hands together. Oh, honey, that would mean the world to us. Ryan clapped me on the back. Knew we could count on you, bro. I excused myself soon after, claiming an early morning meeting. Outside, I leaned against my car, taking deep breaths. The night air was cool, but I felt hot with anger. As I drove away, my phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Thank you, sweetheart. We're so proud of you, and remember, family first. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. Family first. Funny. I finally had something they wanted, and suddenly we were family again. They thought I was still the same old Mike, the guy who smiled through the disappointment, who took the hand-me-downs, who never spoke up. They had no idea who they were dealing with now. The next morning, I sat on my patio with a steaming cup of coffee, scrolling through real estate listings just for fun. My phone buzzed again. Ryan. I let it go to voicemail. I had a feeling this was just the beginning. 2 days after the family dinner ambush, I got another text from Mom. Dinner at Ryan's again this Sunday. We have exciting plans to discuss. Can't wait to see you. I stared at the message, sipping my coffee on the patio of my new house. The sun was shining, birds chirping, and yet I felt a familiar tension creeping up my spine. I knew what exciting plans meant, more like financial plans that had nothing to do with me until now. I debated ignoring it, but curiosity won out. I needed to see just how far they were willing to go. Sunday came, and I parked in Ryan's driveway, noticing the perfectly manicured lawn and the freshly washed SUV gleaming in the sun. I walked to the front door and rang the bell. Mom answered, immediately, beaming like she'd won the neighborhood baking contest. Mikey, so glad you made it. Come in. The dining table was already set with their best china. Ryan sat at the head of the table, grinning like a kid who knew he was getting a new toy. Dad sat beside him, phone in hand, occasionally glancing up. Sit down, sweetheart. Mom guided me to the chair across from Ryan.
The meal started with the usual chit-chat. Ryan's new grill, Mom's latest kitchen gadget, Dad's golf game. I played along, pretending I didn't know what was coming. Halfway through dessert, store-bought cheesecake with canned cherries on top, Mom clinked her fork against her glass. So she began, eyes darting toward Ryan. We wanted to share something exciting with you. Ryan slid a folder across the table. Take a look, bro. I opened it to find a neatly typed estimate for $100,000. The heading read, Sunroom and Garage Expansion, Oakwood Construction.
We thought, since you've done so well with your investments, maybe you'd like to help your brother out. Yeah, it's a solid investment, adds value to the property, and hey, family sticks together, right? I closed the folder and set it aside. That's a lot of money. Well, it's not just for the house. We're also thinking of upgrading the wedding plans. Audrey really wants a destination wedding now, something elegant. And, weddings are so expensive these days. Dad cleared his throat. We figure $100,000 would cover both. You figured, I repeated, leaning back in my chair. We're family, Mom said, voice softening into that familiar guilt-laden tone. We've always been there for each other, and now that you're doing so well, it's just natural to want to help. I let the silence stretch, watching their hopeful faces. The cheesecake tasted sour in my mouth. You mean like when Ryan got a house and I got a lottery ticket? Or when he got a new car and I got a used bike with a flat tire? I said finally. Mom's smile faltered. That was different. Right, I said, standing up. Here's the thing. You never helped me when I needed it. Now that I've made something of myself, you suddenly remember I exist. But we're family, Mom's voice cracked.
I smiled. Well, no one's stopping you from working harder. Ryan's face turned red. Come on, man. It's not like we're asking for a lot. $100,000 isn't a lot. I laughed. Must be nice to live in your world. Mom started to cry softly, dabbing her eyes with a napkin. Dad just shook his head. Ryan crossed his arms, sulking. We just thought, Mom whispered, that you'd want to share your success with your family. I picked up the folder and held it for a moment. You know what? I did want that. For years. But I finally realized something. Family isn't about money or guilt trips. It's about showing up for each other when it matters. And you never showed up for me. I dropped the folder back on the table. Enjoy your dinner. I'm done. As I walked out, Ryan muttered, jerk. I paused at the door, turned back with a grin, and said, well, no one's stopping you from working harder. Outside, the air was crisp and cool. I stood by my car for a moment, taking deep breaths. My phone buzzed in my pocket, another text from Mom. I didn't need to read it. I blocked her number and drove home. The weight of years of disappointment finally lifting from my shoulders. Life without the constant weight of family manipulation felt like breathing fresh air for the first time. My days were my own now. I woke up when I wanted, worked on projects I enjoyed, and traveled whenever the mood struck. No more guilt trips or passive-aggressive comments, just freedom. I invested wisely, just like Carol, my financial advisor. Real estate, blue chip stocks, a couple of promising tech startups. The dividends rolled in steadily, funding weekend getaways to Napa Valley, spontaneous trips to New Orleans for jazz festivals, and a ski trip to Colorado, where I discovered that snowboarding was definitely not my sport. The new house became a sanctuary. I turned the spare bedroom into a home theater, the patio into an outdoor lounge, and the garage into a mini gym. Most mornings, I sat on the terrace with a steaming cup of coffee, watching the sunrise over the manicured lawns. The silence was beautiful. No texts from Mom, no fake invites from Ryan, just me and the sound of birds and the occasional hum of my neighbor's lawnmower. Without the family circus, I realized something unexpected. I was genuinely happy. I didn't feel lonely or resentful. I wasn't looking over my shoulder waiting for the next guilt-laden message. Turns out cutting toxic ties isn't just therapeutic, it's downright liberating. Ryan, meanwhile, hadn't changed a bit. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he was still mooching off Mom and Dad. They paid for the wedding, the sunroom expansion, and even covered his credit card debt when Audrey went on a self-care shopping spree. I almost felt sorry for them. Almost.
One crisp autumn afternoon, I ran into Ryan downtown. I just left a meeting with a potential business partner when I spotted him across the street, standing in front of a coffee shop. He saw me too. Mike, he called out, crossing the street with that familiar swagger. Man, it's been forever. Yeah, I said, keeping my tone neutral. Been busy. He glanced at my tailored blazer and the watch on my wrist. I can see that. Fancy now, huh? I shrugged. Just enjoying life. Must be nice, he said, shoving his hands into his pockets. You know, I still think it's unfair. I raised an eyebrow. What's unfair? That you got lucky, he said, gesturing toward my car, a sleek electric SUV parked nearby. You didn't earn it. You just scratched the ticket. I smiled, shaking my head. Yeah, maybe I got lucky with the ticket, but everything after that? I built it. I learned. I worked. I invested smartly. Ryan snorted. Still, life's unfair. You're right, I said, meeting his gaze. Life is unfair. His expression faltered, like he realized I wasn't agreeing with him. I gave him a nod and walked away, leaving him standing there. That night, I sat on my terrace with a cup of coffee. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink. I leaned back in the chair, breathing in the crisp air. The past felt like a distant memory. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't hurt. I was free. Winning the lottery had given me money, sure, but the real prize was the freedom to live without the people who never valued me. Somewhere across town, Ryan was probably whining to Mom about how unfair life was. And me? I just smiled, sipped my coffee, and enjoyed the quiet. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to hear more real-life experiences about building a life from scratch. Thank you for listening. And remember, family is about love and support, not blatant sibling favoritism. Drop a like. Share this story with someone who might need to hear that message today.